My son asked me to co-sign his loan. Then the banker read the address on the application. The day my son Daniel slid a loan application across the desk and asked for my signature, he told me it was the only way to save his business. "Mom, it's just a backup," he said. "You won't owe a thing." But the banker did not hand me a pen. She looked at the address listed as collateral, then looked directly at me and asked, "Mrs. Clark, did you agree to use your home for this?" Daniel's face changed before he could answer. And in that quiet little office, I realized my son had not brought me there to help him borrow money. He had brought me there to risk the house William and I spent 34 years paying for. If you believe family should never use love as leverage, subscribe and tell me, would you have signed that paper? For a moment, nobody said anything. The little office was too cold. The kind of cold banks keep year-round because people in hard financial conversations tend to sweat. I could hear the muted clicking of a keyboard somewhere outside the glass wall. There was a bowl of peppermints on the banker's desk, and I remember thinking one of them had been unwrapped and left there, soft around the edges. Such a small, ordinary thing. And there I was, 68 years old, sitting beneath a framed picture of rolling Ohio farmland, learning that my own son had put my home on a loan application without asking me first. Daniel leaned forward in his chair. "Mom knows the address," he said quickly. "She just gets nervous when paperwork starts sounding complicated." The banker, a woman named Ms. Patel, did not look at him. She kept her eyes on me. "Mrs. Clark," she said again, gently this time. "I need to ask you directly. Are you aware this application lists your home at 814 Maple Ridge Drive as proposed collateral?" My fingers tightened around the strap of my purse. "I'm aware that's my address," I said. "I'm not aware I agreed to offer it as collateral." Daniel gave a short laugh, like I had misunderstood a harmless joke. "Mom, come on." I explained it in the car. "No," I said. "You said you needed a cosigner." "I did." "A cosigner for a business loan," I said. "You did not say you were asking the bank to put a lien against my home." His jaw tightened. "Ms. Patel folded her hands on the desk. "A cosigner and a property pledge are not the same thing. If your home is being used to secure a loan, you would need to receive separate disclosures, independent information about the risk, and time to review the documents before signing anything." Daniel turned toward her now. "We're family. This isn't some hostile transaction." Her expression stayed professional, but I saw something firm settle behind her eyes. "Family relationships are exactly why we have procedures," she said. That was when I understood something I should have understood before I ever walked through those glass doors. My son had not expected questions. He had expected my love for him to do the work. I looked at Daniel. Really looked at him. He was 42 years old, taller than his father had been, with William's brown eyes and none of William's patience. His blue button-down shirt had been pressed too sharply. His hair was trimmed for a meeting. There was a gold watch on his wrist I had never seen before. And his smile, the one he used to charm strangers and calm upset customers at the hardware store where he worked as a teenager, was gone. "Let's go," he said under his breath. I did not move. "Daniel," I said. "What business loan?" He rubbed one hand over his face. "It's for Clearline renovations. You know that." "I know you have a remodeling company," I said. I did not know it needed my house. "It doesn't need your house," he snapped. Then he caught himself and lowered his voice. "Not like that. This would just help me qualify. It's temporary." "Ms. Patel opened the folder in front of her. "The application requests a $380,000 commercial refinance," she said. The number seemed to hang in the air. $380,000. I had never held that much money in my hands. William and I had worked nearly our whole married life to build something close to it. And most of that value lived in the brick house where I had raised Daniel, where I had packed William's lunch before dawn for 17 years, where I still kept his old blue mug on the top shelf because I could not bring myself to move it. Daniel was asking me to risk it for a business. I barely understood. I stood slowly. Mrs. Clark. Miss Patel said, "You are not obligated to continue this meeting." "I know," I told her. Then I looked at my son. "I'm going home." Daniel rose so fast, his chair rolled backward and bumped the wall. "Mom, don't do this," he said. "You're making it sound worse than it is." "No," I said quietly. "I think you did that." He followed me out into the lobby. "Just hear me out," he said, catching up beside me. "You don't understand what's happening. I understand enough to know you used my address before you had my permission. I used it to start the conversation. You started a conversation about my home without me." His face flushed. "I'm trying to keep my company alive. And I am trying to keep a roof over my head." A few people looked up from the waiting area. Daniel noticed, and his voice became softer, almost wounded. "You know I would never hurt you." I wish I could tell you that I answered him quickly. I wish I had said something sharp and certain. Something that made him understand he had crossed a line no apology could erase. But Daniel was my only child. When he was 7, he used to wait for William at the front window every evening. When he was 16, he broke his arm, falling off a borrowed dirt bike. And I slept upright in a plastic hospital chair because he kept waking up frightened from the pain medication. When he was 28 and his first marriage fell apart, he sat at my kitchen table and cried into both hands. While I made coffee, none of us drank. You do not stop being a mother because your child becomes an adult. Sometimes that is the very thing people count on. "I'm going home," I said again. Then I walked out before he could say anything else. The drive from the bank to Maple Ridge took 22 minutes. I know because I watched the clock at every red light. I passed the pharmacy where William used to pick up my blood pressure medicine, the diner where he took me after church on Sundays, the small park where Daniel learned to ride a bike. Every familiar place seemed different that afternoon. Not ruined. Not yet. But touched by the possibility that someone I loved had looked at my house and seen something other than home. When I pulled into my driveway, Daniel's truck was already behind me. I sat in my car with both hands on the steering wheel. He came to my window and knocked. "Mom." I lowered the glass 2 inches. "Please let me explain." "You can explain from there." He looked offended by that, which told me more than he realized. Clearline got hit by 2 cancellations. He said, "Then the supplier changed their payment terms? I have a crew. I have payroll. I have materials tied up. If I can refinance, I can keep everybody working and get through the next few months." "Why didn't you tell me that before today?" "Because you worry." "Daniel, I am your mother. Worrying is part of the job." He tried to smile, but it failed. "I didn't want you to panic. You didn't want me to ask questions." "That's not fair." "What would be fair?" I asked. "You asking before you put my address on a bank application? You showing me the loan terms before you drove me there? Or would fairness be you telling me whether your wife knows you were planning to use my house?" His eyes dropped. That was answer enough. "Rachel doesn't understand business pressure," he said. I felt something turn cold in my stomach. Then why should I? "Mom, please, don't make this into some family betrayal." I looked at my son standing in the driveway. William had shoveled through 34 winters. There was a crack near the curb that William always meant to repair, The porch light was still on from the morning because I had forgotten to switch it off. "Daniel," I said, "you brought me to a bank and let a stranger tell me you were risking my home. You made it a family betrayal." He opened his mouth, then he closed it. For the first time, I saw fear in him. Not fear for me. Not fear that he had hurt me. Fear that I would say no. He left 10 minutes later. Before he got into his truck, he turned around. "I'm not giving up on this," he said. I stood at the front door, one hand resting on the brass handle. William had installed himself. "Neither am I," I said. After he drove away, I locked the door. Then I locked it again. That evening, I took the old metal file box from the hall closet and carried it to the kitchen table. William had labeled everything in his neat block handwriting: house, insurance, taxes, utilities, wills. He used to joke that if we ever got hit by a tornado, the only thing left standing would be that file box and his coffee thermos. I opened the folder, marked house. There was the deed. The mortgage satisfaction letter from 8 years earlier. The property tax receipts. The homeowner's policy. Our will, updated after William's heart attack. I read every page twice. The deed was only in my name now. William had made sure of that before he died. "You keep the house clear, Becky," he had told me from his hospital bed. "No matter what, a paid-for home is peace." At the time, I thought he was talking about retirement. I did not know he was giving me instructions for this day. The next morning, I called the county recorder's office. The woman who answered sounded young and cheerful. Her name was Marisol. "I'd like to check whether there are any liens, mortgage filings, or documents recorded against my property," I said. She asked for my address and parcel number. I read it from the tax bill. There was a pause as she searched. "No recorded lien," she said. "But I do see a recent document inquiry submitted through an online title search service." "What kind of inquiry?" "It looks like a preliminary ownership report was requested 3 weeks ago." My mouth went dry. "By whom?" "I can't see the requesting party from this screen," she said. "But if you come in, we can help you pull the available public record entries." 3 weeks ago. Daniel had come for dinner 3 weeks ago. He had complimented the kitchen floor. He had asked whether I still kept the house papers in the hall closet. I remembered brushing the question away, teasing him that he had spent too many years around contractors. At the time, it seemed harmless. Now it sounded like a man measuring the locks before he chose which door to try. I thanked Marisol and wrote down the office hours. Then I called my niece, Tasha. Tasha was my late sister's daughter, 36 years old. Practical, plain-spoken, and never impressed by anyone's excuses. She worked as a paralegal at a small law office downtown. She had been the one who helped me sort through hospital bills after William died. Not because I asked, but because she showed up with a yellow legal pad and said, "Aunt Becky, we're going to make a list." She answered on the second ring. "Aunt Rebecca, is everything okay?" I almost said yes. That is another habit mothers have. We tell people we are fine, so they will not have to carry our worry. But I was tired of carrying it alone. "I need you to come over when you can," I said. "And I need you not to tell Daniel." There was silence. Then Tasha said, "I'll be there after work." That afternoon, Daniel called twice. He let it ring. Then he sent a message. "Mom, I'm sorry. You felt blindsided. I should have explained better. But this is time-sensitive. Please don't talk to anyone before we work it out." I read it 3 times. He was sorry I felt blindsided. Not sorry he had blindsided me. And he did not say, "Please don't sign anything." He said, "Please don't talk to anyone." By the time Tasha arrived, The sun was low behind the maple trees. She came in through the kitchen door, carrying a grocery bag with soup, crackers, and a pie from the bakery near her office. She set them down, looked at the papers spread across my table, and did not waste a second pretending this was normal. "What happened?" she asked. So I told her. I told her about the bank, the application, the collateral, the $380,000. Daniel's face when Ms. Oat Patel asked whether I had agreed. Tasha listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "You did the right thing by leaving," she said. "He said it was to save his business." "Maybe it is," she said carefully, "but that doesn't make this acceptable." I nodded, though my throat hurt. Tasha began organizing the documents into small stacks. First, we find out exactly what he submitted. Then we make sure no one can file anything in your name without you knowing, and then you speak to someone who represents you. Not Daniel. Not his bank. Not anybody whose job depends on getting this loan approved. I looked at her. "You think he could do something without my signature?" "I think people who conceal one step may be willing to conceal another," she said. The kitchen went very quiet. Tasha picked up my phone from beside the sugar bowl. "Do you have any emails from Daniel about the meeting?" "Only a text." "Forward it to me. And don't delete anything." I did as she asked. Then she looked at the folder from the bank that Ms. Patel had handed me on the way out. I had not opened it until then. Inside were general loan disclosures, a business entity summary for Clearline Renovations, and a single printed page titled Proposed Collateral Review. Tasha read it once. Then she read it again. "Aunt Rebecca," she said. Something in her voice made me sit straighter. "What?" She turned the page toward me and pointed to a section near the bottom. The collateral address was mine, but beneath it, in smaller print, was a line I had not noticed at the bank. Owner authorization status, documentation pending. And below that was a scanned signature line with my name already typed beside it. Rebecca Clark. I stared at it until the letters blurred. "I didn't sign that," I whispered. Tasha's face lost all color. "No," she said. "You didn't." Then she picked up the page and looked closer. And whoever prepared this may have made a very serious mistake. Tasha did not tell me what she thought the mistake was right away. Instead, she pulled the page closer beneath the kitchen light and took out her reading glasses. "There's a document reference number here," she said. "And this line says the borrower submitted an owner authorization packet electronically." I looked at the words without understanding them. "Does that mean Daniel signed something?" "It means someone represented that you were willing to let the bank review your property as security." "I was never willing." "I know." Tasha's voice was calm, but I knew her well enough to hear the anger underneath it. She had inherited that from my sister. Tasha did not raise her voice when she was upset. She got quieter, more precise. "He could have typed my name," I said. "Yes." "He could have used one of the old documents from the hall closet." "Yes." The kitchen seemed to shrink around us. I thought about every time Daniel had been in my house over the last year. Sunday dinners, Christmas morning. The weekend he came by after a storm and helped me move patio chairs into the garage. The afternoon he fixed the loose handrail by the basement steps. I had never watched him while he walked through my home. Why would I? He was my son. Tasha placed both hands flat on the table. "Tomorrow morning, I want you to call Ms. Patel and tell her plainly that you did not authorize the use of your property and did not sign any related paperwork. Then I want you to call an attorney." "An attorney?" I asked. "Yes. Aunt Rebecca." "But nothing has happened yet." Tasha looked at the page again. "Something has already happened. We just don't know how far it went." That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing Daniel's voice outside my car. Don't make this into some family betrayal. It was a strange thing to say when he had brought me into a bank without telling me my home was on the line. Stranger still, because he had not said, I will withdraw the application. He had not said, I'm sorry. He had said he was not giving up. At 6 a.m, I gave up trying to sleep. I made coffee in the blue mug William used to use, then carried it into the living room and sat beside the front window. The house was quiet in the way it had been quiet since William passed. There were mornings when that silence felt peaceful. I could hear birds in the maple tree. I could hear the furnace turning on. I could hear my own thoughts without someone else's television or footsteps moving through the rooms. That morning, the quiet felt different. It felt like I was waiting for someone to try the door. At 9 o'clock, I called Ms. Patel. I expected her assistant, or a general customer service line. But she answered herself. Mrs. Clark, she said. I'm glad you called. I need to be very clear. I told her I did not authorize my home to be used as collateral. I did not sign an owner authorization form, and I would like to know every document submitted with my name attached. There was a brief pause. I've already placed a note on the file, she said. The loan application is on hold, pending internal review. On hold? I asked. Yes. No loan funds have been issued. Relief came over me so suddenly I had to close my eyes. No loan funds had been issued. For one small moment, it felt as if the ground under my feet had stopped moving. Then Ms. Patel added, However, Mrs. Clark, I need to explain that because you are disputing an apparent authorization. Our fraud and compliance team may need to review the documents. Does that mean Daniel will be in trouble? I hated myself a little for asking that first. Not because I did not care about right and wrong. I did. But the boy I remembered was still somewhere inside the man who had done this. My mind kept trying to protect him from consequences before it protected me from harm. Ms. Patel's voice softened. It means the bank has to determine whether documents were inaccurate or submitted without authority. We cannot make assumptions about intent. I thanked her. Before we hung up, she said something that stayed with me. Mrs. Clark, you were right not to sign anything. You did not fully understand. Please, do not meet with anyone about this alone. After the call, I wrote down every word I could remember. Tasha had told me to document things. It felt unnatural at first. Writing down conversations with my own son, as if he were a stranger who had damaged my car in a parking lot. But I did it anyway. Date. Time. What was said. Who was present. I wrote until my hand cramped. At 11, Tasha called with the name of an attorney. Her name is Lorraine Bowers, she said. She handles elder financial exploitation, real estate disputes, and estate matters. She won't make you feel foolish for coming in. I already feel foolish, I said. No, Tasha answered. You feel hurt? Those are not the same thing. Lorraine Bowers had an office above a florist downtown. I had expected a large law firm with marble floors and people rushing around in expensive shoes. Instead, there was a narrow staircase, a waiting room with 2 worn armchairs, and a reception desk decorated with photographs of dogs. Lorraine herself was in her early 50s, with silver streaks through dark hair and a voice that made you feel as though she had time for you even when she probably did not. She did not rush me. She asked questions. When did Daniel first mention his business trouble? Had he ever asked about the deed before? Did he have copies of my identification? Did anyone else have keys to the house? Had I ever signed a power of attorney? Did I have a safe deposit box? Online bank accounts? Or passwords stored in the home? Each question seemed to open another window I had forgotten to lock. I have a fireproof box in the closet. I told her. It has my passport, my social security card, the house documents, William's death certificate. Who knows where it is? Danielle. Lorraine wrote something down. Do you have it with you? No. After this meeting, you should not go home alone. I stared at her. Do you think he would come into my house? I think we should avoid deciding what he would or would not do. She said carefully. Your son used your property information in a financial application without first obtaining your consent. That tells us we need to secure your documents and accounts. Her words did not accuse him. That made them harder to argue with. Lorraine helped me make a list. We would contact the 3 credit bureaus to place a security freeze on my credit file. We would notify my homeowner's insurance carrier that no changes should be accepted without direct verbal confirmation from me. We would speak to the county recorder's office about a property fraud alert, which would notify me if a deed, mortgage, or lien was filed under my name. Then Lorraine sent a formal letter to the bank. The letter stated that I disputed any signature, authorization, or representation made in connection with the proposed collateral. It instructed the bank not to rely on any document bearing my name, unless it was verified directly with me and my counsel. Seeing my name in the letter made my stomach twist. Rebecca Clark. It looked so official, so final. I thought of Daniel sitting in his truck after he left my driveway, telling me he was not giving up. For the first time, I wondered whether he had already done more than I knew. Tasha met me at the house after the appointment. Lorraine had advised us to change the locks. Even though I did not know whether Daniel still had a key, the locksmith was a kind young man named Aaron who kept apologizing because replacing all the exterior locks would take a few hours. You don't need to apologize. I told him, you're doing good work. While he worked, Tasha and I went through the closets. We found the fireproof box exactly where it always was, behind an old suitcase William and I had bought for our honeymoon. The passport was there. My social security card was there. The deed was there. But my driver's license was missing. At first, I told myself I must have misplaced it. I checked my purse. I checked the kitchen counter. I checked the drawer by the back door, where I kept takeout menus and spare batteries. I checked the bathroom cabinet, the laundry room, even the pocket of the cardigan I had worn to church the previous Sunday. Nothing. Then Tasha opened the small manila folder, where I kept old copies of tax records. Aunt Rebecca, she said. She was holding a piece of paper. It was a photocopy of my driver's license. Not an old one, a recent one. I could tell because the background was clear, and my current address was visible. Someone had copied it on the printer in my own home. The date stamp in the bottom corner was from 19 days earlier, the day Daniel had come over to fix my Wi-Fi router. I sat down on the edge of the sofa. For several seconds, I could not speak. Tasha crouched in front of me. We don't know he took it, she said. But she did not sound convinced. I remembered that evening now. Daniel had arrived with a small toolbox and a paper bag from the deli. He said my internet connection had been dropping because my router was outdated. He moved around the dining room, unplugging cords and resetting things while I heated soup. At one point, I had gone upstairs to look for a password written in an old notebook. When I came back down, he was standing by the desk near the printer. I had not thought anything of it. Why would I? He was my son. My chest began to ache in a way that had nothing to do with my heart. I kept every door open for him, I said. Tasha took my hand. I know. That evening, Daniel came to the house. He knocked once, then twice, then stood on the porch with both hands in his jacket pockets. I saw him through the front window before he saw me. He looked tired, more tired than I had ever seen him. His face was unshaven. and the neat button-down shirt from the bank had been replaced by an old gray sweatshirt. For 1 week, painful second, I wanted to unlock the door. I wanted to make him coffee and let him sit at my kitchen table. I wanted him to tell me he had made a terrible mistake, that he had withdrawn everything, that none of it was worth losing his mother over. But then I remembered the scanned signature line. Owner authorization status. Documentation pending. I opened the door with the chain still latched. "Mom," he said. "What do you want? Daniel?" His eyes moved past me, noticing Tasha in the living room. "So you brought her into this?" I asked for help. "She's turning you against me." "No," I said. "Your choices are doing that." He looked down at the chain on the door. "You changed the locks?" "Yes." His mouth fell open slightly. "You think I'm going to break into your house? I think I have a right to protect it." "From me?" I did not answer. Daniel stepped closer. "Mom, I know this looks bad. I know I should have been more direct. But I had no choice." "You had choices." "No, I didn't." His voice rose. "You don't understand what it's like to have 6 people depending on you. You don't know what it's like to wake up every morning knowing one bad month could take everything." I felt sorry for him. I did. But sorrow is not the same thing as permission. "You should have told me the truth," I said. "I was going to." "When? After the meeting?" "You mean after I signed?" He looked away. That silence was an answer. Then he said something I had not expected. Rachel's brother promised he had an investor lined up. He said I just needed to get the refinance approved first. I thought once the money came in, I could pay it down fast. You would never have been at risk. "You thought," I said slowly, "you could risk my house without telling me, and then fix it before I found out." It was temporary. So was William's life, I said. The words came out before I could stop them. Daniel went still. I had never used his father's death to hurt him. Not once. But I was not trying to hurt him now. I was trying to make him understand. "Your father worked himself tired so we could own this house outright," I said. "He did not do that, so our son could put it on the line, because another man made him a promise." Daniel's face crumpled for a second. Then anger returned. "You have no idea how much I've sacrificed for this family." Tasha stood up behind me. "Danielle," she said, "you need to leave. This doesn't concern you." "It concerns her home." He pointed at her. "You always hated me." "That's not true," Tasha said. "But I do hate seeing Aunt Rebecca frightened in her own house." Daniel looked at me again. "Did you report me?" "I told the bank I did not authorize the documents." "You reported me." "I told the truth." He stared at me with an expression I could not recognize. Then he said, "Fine. Keep your house. Watch what happens when I lose everything." He walked down the porch steps before I could reply. At the sidewalk, he turned back. "You think you know the whole story," he said. "You don't." Then he drove away. For the next 2 days, I heard nothing from him. No phone call. No apology. No message. It was almost worse than the arguing. On the 3rd morning, Ms. Patel called. Her voice was controlled, but I could hear the concern beneath it. "Mrs. Clark, I'm calling because the bank's review found an additional document in the loan file." I gripped the counter. "What document?" "A notarized property authorization form." "But I never signed one." "I understand," she said. "And I need to ask you something important. Do you know a notary named Gordon Pike?" The name meant nothing to me. "No." "Ms. Patel paused. "The form states that Mr. Pike notarized your signature 8 days ago at your home." I looked around my kitchen. At the lace curtains. At the sugar bowl. At the blue mug William had used every morning. 8 days ago. I had been at my friend Louise's house for lunch. I had not been home. No, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He was never here. Ms. Patel took a breath. Then there is another issue. The signature on the form does not appear to match the signature card we have on file from a prior account you held with us. I closed my eyes. What happens now? The bank has referred the matter to its fraud unit. They may contact you directly. Your attorney should also know. When the call ended, I stood alone in my kitchen for a long time. Then I called Lorraine. I expected her to sound shocked. She did not. She sounded prepared. Rebecca, she said, this is serious. Do not speak to Daniel about the notary form until we understand the documents, and the bank has preserved the records. But he's my son. Yes, Lorraine said quietly. And that is why this hurts so much. An hour later, Tasha arrived with a folder under her arm. She had gone to the county recorder's office before coming over. She placed one page on the table. Aunt Rebecca, she said, I found the title, search request Marisol told us about. At the top of the page was the name of the company that had ordered it, not Clearline Renovations, not the bank. It was a company I had never heard of. Pike Property Holdings, LC. And beneath that was the address of the business. The same address as Daniel's remodeling office. For several seconds, I could not take in what Tasha had found. Pike Property Holdings, LC. The company that had ordered the title search, shared an address with Daniel's remodeling office. Not the bank. Not a lender. Not a company I had ever agreed to deal with. Daniel's office. I sat at my kitchen table with the page in front of me, feeling as though every wall in the house had shifted a few inches while I was not looking. What is Pike Property Holdings? I asked. Tasha did not pretend to know. It could be a holding company. It could be connected to the notary. It could be nothing more than an address someone used for paperwork. But it has Daniel's office address. Yes. I looked toward the front window. The maple tree in the yard had started to turn gold at the edges. William used to say that fall came early when the summer had been too hot. He would stand on the porch with his hands in his pockets, looking around at our small piece of the world as if he had built every inch of it himself. Maybe, in a way, a hut. Not with lumber or bricks. With time. With early mornings. Overtime shifts. Packed lunches. Postponed vacations. And every small choice that said, someday, we will have something no one can take from us. I pressed my fingertips to the document. This is not nothing, I said. No, Tasha replied. It isn't. Lorraine agreed. When Tasha emailed her the page, Lorraine called us within 20 minutes. I want both of you in my office tomorrow morning, she said. And Rebecca, I don't want you contacting Daniel. Not yet. Not even to ask him what this company is? Not until we have the records preserved. If he understands what we know, he may try to explain it away before we know what actually happened. The next day, Lorraine had more papers waiting for us. She had requested a copy of the bank's complete loan file. Because I had formally disputed the authorization, the bank's fraud department had retained all electronic submissions, including timestamps, uploaded images, email addresses, and the information used to create the collateral packet. Lorraine explained it in careful terms. The bank will conduct its own review, she said. They can decline the loan, preserve the evidence, and refer suspected fraud to law enforcement if appropriate. But they cannot decide criminal responsibility themselves. I nodded. I did not want anyone promising me a perfect ending. I had reached the age where I understood that life rarely gives you one. What I wanted was simpler. I wanted the truth. Lorraine turned her laptop toward us. The owner authorization form was uploaded from a business email account connected to Clearline Renovations. She said. I stared at the screen. There it was. An email address ending in Clearline Renovations. Con. Daniel's company. The upload had happened at 10:43 at night, 5 days before he took me to the bank. What does that prove? I asked. It proves the document was submitted through an account associated with his business. Lorraine said. It does not, by itself, prove who was sitting at the computer. Tasha leaned forward. And the notary? Lorraine clicked to another page. The notary, Mr. Pike, was contacted by the bank. He has been asked to provide his journal entry, identification record, and any notes from the appointment. My breath caught. Will he? He is required to keep certain records, Lorraine said. Whether those records are complete is another question. She hesitated before continuing. There is something else. Pike Property Holdings, LLC was registered 6 months ago. The organizer is not Daniel. Then who is it? I asked. Lorraine looked at the page. Rachel's brother, Marcus Hale. I felt the room go still. Marcus. I had met him only a few times. He was the kind of man who always seemed to be speaking into his phone when he came to family gatherings. One finger pressed against his other ear, saying things like, I'm closing something big. And, I know people who can move money. He had shown up at Daniel's last birthday dinner, wearing a dark suit and an expensive-looking watch. He had talked about real estate while the rest of us ate cake. Daniel had told me Marcus was helping him think bigger about the business. At the time, I had smiled politely and changed the subject. Now I remembered something else. At Easter, Marcus had asked me whether I still owned my home free and clear. I had laughed and said, That's an awfully personal question over deviled eggs. He had smiled as if it were a joke. I no longer believed it was. 2 days later, Daniel asked to meet. Not at my house. At Lorraine's office. His message was short. Mom, I need to explain. Please don't bring Tasha. Please just hear me out. Lorraine read it and shook her head. He can request a meeting, she said. But you will not meet alone. And Tasha can be present if you want her there. I want her there, I said. I did not feel guilty for saying it. That surprised me. For years, I had believed family problems should be handled privately, quietly, with everyone's dignity protected. But there is a difference between privacy and secrecy. Privacy protects people. Secrecy protects wrongdoing. The meeting was set for Friday afternoon. Daniel arrived 10 minutes early. He sat in the conference room with both hands clasped between his knees. He looked smaller than he had on my porch. Not physically smaller, of course, but stripped of the certainty he had worn at the bank. Rachel came with him. She would not look at me at first. Lorraine sat beside me. Tasha sat on my other side. There was a small pitcher of water in the middle of the table. Untouched. Daniel began with the sentence I had been waiting to hear. I'm sorry. It should have made everything easier. It did not. Because I had learned that an apology could be the beginning of truth, or just another way to delay it. I waited. Daniel swallowed. I should never have put your address on anything. I know that. Why did you? I asked. He looked down. Clearline is in trouble. I know that much. No, he said. You don't. His voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, I saw the boy who had cried at my kitchen table after his first marriage collapsed. I saw the little boy who had run to me after nightmares. I saw every version of my son I had loved. Then I reminded myself that none of those versions had signed my name. "Tell me," I said. Daniel explained that he had taken on more projects than his company could handle. A supplier dispute had delayed 2 kitchen remodels. One customer had refused final payment. A subcontractor had walked away with a deposit and left Daniel responsible for repairs. He had used personal credit cards to cover payroll. Then he had borrowed money from Marcus. At first, Marcus called it a bridge loan. He said he knew investors. He said he could help Daniel refinance the business, consolidate the debt, and turn Clearline around. But there was a fee every time. Daniel said, a document fee, an investor review fee, a title fee. I kept paying because he said we were almost there. Rachel finally spoke. I told him to stop, she said, tears in her eyes. I told him Marcus was taking advantage of him. Daniel looked at her with anger. You didn't know what it was like. I knew you were lying to your mother, she said. That silenced him. I turned to Rachel. Did you know about my house? She covered her mouth with one hand. I knew he was trying to get a loan, she said. I knew Marcus said your house would make the application stronger. But Daniel told me you had agreed. He said you wanted to help because the house was paid off and there was no real risk. I looked at Daniel. You told your wife I agreed? He closed his eyes. I thought I could get you to agree. No, I said. You thought you could make the paperwork look normal enough that I would sign before I understood it. His shoulders dropped. Yes. It was the first honest word he had given me in days. Lorraine spoke next. Mr. Clark, did you upload the owner authorization form? Daniel said nothing. Daniel, I said. He looked at me. I typed her name on the preliminary form. He said, I didn't think it was the final authorization. Marcus said the bank needed to see that the property owner was open to it before they could move forward. And the notarized form? Lorraine asked. Daniel's eyes filled. Marcus said he could handle the paperwork. Did you know he was having someone pretend to be me? No. Did you ask how he was going to get a notarized document without Rebecca present? Daniel looked down at the table. That answer was enough. He had not needed to know every detail. He had made room for the lie because the truth would have stopped his plan. Tasha reached into her bag and placed a printed page in front of him. This is the title, search request, she said. Pike Property Holdings. Marcus's company. Your office address. Daniel looked at it once and went pale. He used my office address because he said it made the company look established. He whispered, Did he ever tell you what Pike Property Holdings was for? Lorraine asked. He said it was an investor vehicle. And did you give him information about Rebecca's home? Daniel's face crumpled. Yes. The word landed heavily in the room. I wanted to cry. I wanted to shout. Instead, I sat very still. What information? I asked. The address? The fact it was paid off. I told him you owned it alone after Dad died. Daniel's voice shook. I didn't give him your license. I swear I didn't. Then how did he get a copy? Lorraine asked. Daniel looked at me, and I saw him remember. The night he had fixed my Wi-Fi. The night he stood by my desk. He put both hands over his face. Oh, God, he said. I did not need him to say it. But he did. I copied it, he whispered. I thought I might need it for the application. I told myself it was just so I could fill out the preliminary paperwork before we met with the bank. My heart did not break loudly. It broke quietly, the way an old glass does when it slips from your hand and hits the floor. I trusted you in my home. I said, I know. I trusted you with the papers your father left to protect me. I know. You did not just take a copy of my license. Daniel, you took my right to decide what happened to my life. He was crying now. Not dramatically. Not loudly. but I had spent too many years being a mother to confuse tears with repair. Lorraine told Daniel that he needed his own attorney. She told him that the bank's fraud team would likely contact him and that he should not destroy or alter any records. She told Marcus's name would be included in the information she provided to the appropriate investigators. Daniel nodded without looking up. Then he asked the question I had feared. "Are you going to press charges against me?" Lorraine looked at me. The room waited. I thought about all the years behind us. Daniel at 7. Waiting at the window. Daniel at 16. His arm in a cast. Daniel at 28. Broken-hearted at my kitchen table. And I thought about Rebecca Clark at 68. Sitting in a bank office while a stranger asked whether she had agreed to put her house at risk. I had spent my whole life believing that love meant showing up when someone needed you. But I was finally learning that love did not mean stepping aside while someone used you. I am going to cooperate fully with the bank, and with anyone reviewing what happened. I said, I am not going to lie for you. I am not going to hide evidence. And I am not going to make your choices disappear because I am your mother. Daniel nodded slowly. That's fair, he said. No, I told him. It's necessary. The bank declined Daniel's refinance application the following week because no lien had been recorded and no loan funds had been issued. My home remained untouched. Lorraine confirmed the county fraud alert was active. My credit files were frozen, and all of my important documents were now stored in a safe deposit box. The bank's investigation continued. They requested records from Marcus Hale and from the notary, Gordon Pike. Lorraine later told me that the bank had referred the matter for further review after finding inconsistencies in the notarization and the submitted identification. I did not ask for every detail. I had learned that some answers come slowly, but I gave every document I had. I gave my statement. I gave the bank the text messages, the copied license record, the timeline Tasha helped me prepare, and the truth. Daniel hired an attorney. He stopped taking new work through Clearline and began selling equipment to pay the debts he could. Rachel moved with their daughter to her sister's house for a while. I heard that Daniel was attending a financial counseling program through a local nonprofit. I was glad, but I did not confuse that with redemption. Not yet. 3 months later, Daniel wrote me a letter, not a text. A letter? His handwriting was uneven, like he had written it slowly. He said he understood why I had changed the locks. He said he understood why I had protected my accounts and my home. He did not ask me to forgive him. He did not say he had been forced. He did not blame Marcus, Rachel, the business, or bad luck. He wrote, I made the first wrong choice. And then I kept making more, because I was afraid to face what I had done. That was the first sentence from him that gave me even a small measure of peace. I did not invite him over. Not then. I wrote back 2 weeks later. I told him I loved him. I told him I hoped he would do the hard work of becoming someone who could be trusted again. And I told him that if he wanted a relationship with me, it would have to be built on truth, accountability, and boundaries he did not get to negotiate away. He replied, I understand. For once, I believed he might. Spring came early that year. One afternoon, I stood on my porch with a small pot of yellow mums beside me. I had replaced the old lock set with one I chose myself. It was plain brass, sturdy and simple, the kind William would have liked. I looked across the yard at the house we had built our lives around. It was still mine, not because I had outsmarted anyone, not because I had wanted to fight my son. It was mine because I had finally stopped treating my own safety like something I had to apologize for. Family can ask for help. Family can make mistakes. Family can even earn forgiveness. But no one gets to use love as leverage, steal your signature, or gamble with the life you worked to protect. Not even the person you once held in your arms. If Rebecca's story reminded you that dignity has no age, please subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who needs the courage to protect their home, their money, or their voice. And tell me in the comments, where would you draw the line when family asks for more than help?